This is a row of 12.5 kilowatts of solar panels. These are frameless solar panels, which are kind of unusual. That's just the glass comes right out to the edge of the panel. They're glass on glass, which means that there's a top sheet of glass and a bottom sheet of glass, and the solar module or the solar cells are sandwiched or laminated in between the two layers of glass. There's rails up here that contain all the wiring. All of this row of modules is actually cut up into 6 what we call strings, or modules that are wired all in series of 11 modules each. And then each of those series strings is wired back to the inverters over here. So if you want to come around over here, we can take a look at the inverters. There's 3 of them on this row of modules. So each inverter handles 22 cells, or 22 modules, or 2 strings. These are the disconnects for the strings. This is the AC disconnect. The DC power comes from the arrays through these conduits into these disconnects. Through the inverter, that gets converted into AC power, which comes into this disconnect right here, which then combines with all the other outputs from the inverters and then goes down into the ground out to the grid over to the transformer by the barn. So that's in a nutshell how it works.
Now, how do the solar panels turn the sun's energy into electricity?
Well, they do that through magic, basically. The quick explanation is that there are semiconductor layers within the cell that are doped in such a way that they'll only allow electrons to pass through the interface between the 2 doped layers in one direction. So a photon comes from the sun and smacks an electron out of its orbit from an atom, and half the time that electron will get smacked in one direction, and half it'll get smacked in the other direction. And if it passes through that interface between the 2 doped materials, that's great, but it can never go back the other way because of the chemistry of the materials. And so what that does is that sets up a flow of electrons through the interface between those 2 doped materials, and a flow of electrons is what electricity is. That's how. Okay, so we've augured a bunch of holes in the ground here, 4 feet deep, and we've put all these poles in. There's 30 of them all together. We're waiting for a concrete truck right now to set the poles in concrete, and after that cures, we'll cut them all to the same height and then put another pole along the top of them and then secure that in place. And on top of that, we'll put all of the diagonal rails. They're spaced every 4 feet on top of the horizontal pole, and then all the solar panels will get installed onto those rails.
Now how tall are these poles exactly when they're going to be all cut off?
They vary actually because the ground is not even. And so they're going to average about 4.5 feet or so, maybe 5 feet.
Now, is there any danger of actually getting electrocuted off a solar panel by touching it, or?
No, you can't get shocked by touching the solar panel, and all the wires that are installed back to the inverters are protected against somebody getting shocked by touching anything. So they're generally pretty safe.
I'd like to thank you for your time. Thanks.
Yeah, you're very welcome.